So why do I think that a random Lil Wayne lyric actually would serve as a really good piece of advice for Wale and all artists who feel underappreciated? I'm gonna get into that in a second. So to go into what actually happened, Wale has been in the news recently. I'm sure people saw, many of you saw that he was featured, well, not featured, but he became a big storyline around one of these award shows because Kai Cenat, the popular streamer, didn't know who he was. But then from there, Wale recently sat down in an interview with Cam Newton, which was a very interesting interview. They touched on several different topics, but one of the topics they touched on was why Wale feels as though staying relevant within hip hop is traumatic. And one of the things he mentioned was many of his friends have passed, and he didn't really clarify if he was talking about friends he had from before he was famous who may have been like in the streets or something, or if he was talking about fellow rappers. But I'm gonna assume he's talking about fellow rappers because, as we know, there over the past like 10-15 years there have been many rappers who have passed away from for various reasons, whether it be drug overdoses or whether it be just being murdered, or sometimes whether it just be health complications because of the lifestyle that they live, right? Like they drink too much codeine or whatever. But he also talked about some of the other ways that he believes that it could be a bit traumatic and frustrating trying to stay relevant within hip hop. And one of the things that he mentioned that I thought was a very good point was he talked about the fact that music can be very subjective, and because it's art, so music is very subjective, and because of that, you as an artist, you can kind of be stifled a bit and become a bit frustrated because regardless of how good you may be as a rapper, the general public will say that you suck either way. And more often than not, it's not actually because they're good gauges of talent, but just because of other stupid reasons. Like I say this all the time, most people only like certain artists simply because they're already popular, because most people are followers. So most people, they wouldn't know talent if it hit them upside the head, to be honest with you. And if you're an artist who is talented, that could definitely become a bit frustrated, right? You're putting your heart and soul, and Wale and Cam Newton, they mentioned this in the interview, you're putting your heart and soul into this art that you're trying to make and trying to be unique and creative, and then somebody, because they don't perceive you as likable, or because you're not in some high profile relationship that's posted on these different T blogs, or because you're not somebody who has a felony or something, because of because of these silly reasons, many people will legitimately just dismiss you and just say, well, you're not good. Which, as an artist, that can be a bit traumatic over time, right? Because even though it sounds like it's not that traumatic, that is a bit traumatic to have your abilities constantly downplayed by people who really don't know what they're talking about. Like, you imagine if you're working a regular job. Imagine you working a regular job as like a accountant or something, and the IRS is sending you letters saying you're not even that good at accounting nothing. Like, and then on top of that, a bunch of random customers, including people who weren't even your customers but might be other people's customers, they're just randomly jumping in and leaving you bad reviews on Yelp and saying that you're not good at this specific job. You're gonna, even if you logically know that you're doing everything that you should be doing and that you are competent enough, over time that can begin to frustrate you. That would frustrate and start to confuse anybody, right? Especially artists, because I'm sure many of you watching this may be artists, or you may be just a big fan of artists. I'm an artist myself, obviously. So it can over time kind of mess with your psyche, like, because now you're second guessing yourself, even though when you first started making this art, you never second guessed anything. You just went face first into trying to be creative. And he also talked about how it can be a bit frustrating and traumatic going through all the effort to try to gain people's attention, right? Because in this day and age, it's no secret that people have extremely short attention spans. So whether you're an artist or whether you're a content creator, if you're any sort of creative at this point, like you're going through so much effort to try to fight for the attention of people who have the attention span of like a gnat. Like and that can bother people over time. Again, this interview with Wale and Cam Newton, I thought was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty dope. Wale's always gotten a bad rap for being very sensitive, overly sensitive, which part of that's his fault, but then part of that I think is a bit overblown. It two things could be true at the same time, but it's very clear though that Wale does want acceptance and he wants to receive his flowers, and it's been clear throughout his entire career, even going back to the early days, right? When he was at his peak in popularity in the early to mid 2010s, he clearly wasn't satisfied with the love that he was being shown, even though he's had success, right? He feels like he should have gotten more, right? But this is why I wanted to bring it back to the Lil Wayne lyric, where Lil Wayne said, for anybody who's listened to Big Sean, on Big Sean's album Dark Sky Paradise, there's a song called Deep where Lil Wayne has a guest feature, and it's low-key one of my favorite Lil Wayne verses of all time, specifically towards the end where he said, hey, because he was really giving props to Big Sean, but I think this is good advice for everybody, where he said, hey, even if they don't remember you, they remember raps, so just spit it back and hope somebody's digging that. Which I think that's a very powerful statement, of course, just saying like, hey, unfortunately, everybody is not going to get their flowers while they're alive, and that sucks, but that's realistically going to be the case. Even as a content creator, you could have a lot of content creators who are putting their heart and soul into trying to make something, and many people won't even acknowledge that they like the content. They won't even hit the like button, to be honest with you. But then, and I've seen several podcasts experience this, where they announce that they're going to stop doing their podcast, and all of a sudden hundreds of people come out of nowhere to be like, oh man, I'm gonna miss this. Well, it's like, well, damn man, you should have, you should have been, showing love to that the whole time. But in general, still, I think the Lil Wayne verse, specifically that line, could be a great piece of advice as far as just being content with what you've done, even though there's a chance that it may never really be fully appreciated. At the very least, just understanding that you did you did the best that you could, and all you could do is just let it be at that point. And I think Wale and many other artists should definitely keep that in mind, right? Because somebody like Wale, he clearly wants acceptance, but he hasn't gotten as much as he's wanted, and realistically he never will. And it's not really the end of the world, to be honest with you. Like, you look at somebody like Wale's career, he's had multiple top 40 songs, he has had multiple songs debut at #1, multiple albums go gold or platinum, he's traveled the world, he's an artist who, while he's a bit underrated, he still had one of the better runs in the 2010s. He has still done more than most people could ever dream of doing, and he's still not content. And that's on him, that's up to him to figure out. But I think other artists, we still can learn from that lesson too, of trying to be content, right? Because many of us may never even get to where Wale is at, but we still choose to be creative with the hope that maybe it'll blow up, but even if it doesn't blow up, at the very least, we did the best we could. I'm out.